Welcome back to another episode of Vintage and Voltage, where we're trying to turn this 1970 Datsun 2000 Roadster into the ultimate driver's car. We're trying to, anyway. In the last episode, we introduced our new project, and we started trying to play around with some ideas for what transmission we might use, and borrowed somebody's transmission who was incredibly gracious to let us borrow it, to see if it would fit in this car. And good news, it does. So I went on the hunt and I managed to find a low miles, unmolested, it appears to have been coming from a car that's not super beat up, a good transmission for this car. So I've purchased that. We have that in our possession. Now all we need to do is get an adapter so that we can attach that transmission to the engine that we already have and start really test fitting things and making the engine and transmission work in this platform. But before we can do that, there's like a lot of really boring, not very much fun work that has to happen first. Despite the fact that this car is extremely clean for a vehicle of this age, it's not perfect. We've got a little bit of rust here and there, and those rust spots need to be taken care of. So in this episode, it's time to tackle all of the boring crap. We gotta cut holes, get rid of some rust, weld in some new panels, which I am not a professional, so don't expect perfection, but I'm gonna do my best, and it can't be worse than the rust. And just try to get this chassis a little bit cleaned up so that it's ready for the new engine and transmission once we're ready to kind of mate these two things together. By the way, I'm so sorry about the really long delay between videos. I went on vacation and then we had like weeks of 190-degree days here in Colorado, and it just made it really hard to work in especially an uninsulated garage. So because we've had so many weeks of uninsulated...
So many uninsulated days.
So many uninsulated days. It's really hard to work in an uninsulated garage when it's that hot. So we've insulated it now, so it should be much better going forward. And hopefully the season's changing a little bit so that the ridiculously hot weather is less often. With all that being said, I think it's time we actually get to work on this car and start taking care of this rust. See what's under it. Not too bad. A little more rust than I was kind of hoping for. There's a lot of hidden rust underneath these panels. Basically, there's like a little gap underneath where all the ribs of the floor go, and originally there would have been sound damping material covering all of this. So water can easily get underneath that sound damping material and then go underneath these rails and just turn it into the Titanic. Great design, Datsun. It's easy enough. We drill these things out, drill out all the spot welds using like a rotobroach tool. And once we get down, you can just kind of see the damage. It looks like none of this is actually all the way through, thankfully. There's a few spots on the other side that are, but This side is looking a little bit better. So we're gonna grind and clean this up a bit. And what you end up with is this. You can see this is perfectly smooth. I can barely feel anything with my hand. It feels really good. So we've got a little bit of rust repair that we need to do over here. You can see there's a couple little pinholes and stuff and some spots where people have tried to save the rust in the past. So we'll get all of that fixed. Then we're going to encapsulate all of this rust with some rust converter. The rust converter is it's good. Like I said, the same thing with the trunk. It's gonna prevent that rust from coming back. And then after we rust convert and kind of get this so that it can't regrow, I'm going to rebuild these rails. These were set for the stock seats. I'm too tall for the stock seats, to be honest, so we're using the Miata seats in this, and we're going to set them a lot further back to try to give myself a little bit more comfort in the cabin. So I'm going to probably make new rails like this that are going to probably be a little bit beefier. And once we get all that in place, then we'll recoat it with the same POR15 we're using in the trunk. Make this thing last another 50, 60 years plus, hopefully. Yikes. That is a lot of rust. Is that a leaf? How long has that been under that?
Oh, there it goes.
How? Wow, dude. That's massive. Time to vacuum and assess the damage. I think honestly, before I even bother, I'm just gonna hit it with a screwdriver a few times and try to break up what's on here. Pray I don't go through the floor. Oh. Like that?
Oh boy.
Great. Honestly, as swollen as that was, I'm mostly impressed that it's not more. That's because I'm going through the floor again. Great. Well, after lots of hard work and lots of sanding and a lot of help from my buddy Carl, we've got the trunk sanded and prepped for at least treating the rust. There's a lot of surface rust on the floor, nothing crazy, and something that's easily solved. So getting through all of that's important just to make sure it can't come back. Now that we've got through that, we're going to do a rust converter on all the bare metal. That kind of converts the rust into something a little bit harder, and it also prevents it from coming back. And then I've got POR 15, white POR 15 that will be coating everything in back here so that we can kind of prevent the rust from ever coming back again. Stuff is harder than heck, so it's pretty cool. In all the traditional spots these cars like to rust, like back here in the corners of the rear fender, there's definitely rust trying to develop. It's not all the way through yet, so I'm really hoping that some rust converter and a little bit of love is gonna, fix that. And on the other side of it, I've been contemplating whether or not to cut the rear fenders, and I know that like a lot of purists out there are going, no! But I want to be able to fit a little bit wider tires back here, so doing some sort of a flare in the rear will help that tremendously. And before I was thinking that these fenders were completely rust-free, and so I just have been laboring over the idea of cutting perfect fenders to hack them up, and that just feels wrong. But they're actually not perfect. There's a decent amount of rust kind of in the seam where the tub of the fender and the body meet, right in here. And I haven't sanded through the outside of the body to see if there's any body filler in there, but based on what I'm seeing, I think there is. So actually cutting that out and changing the shape of the car a little bit is not the blasphemy that I thought it was going to be. So we may be going forward with that. Yeah, the trunk is looking a heck of a lot better. We're kind of almost ready to start making it like shiny and stuff. This is definitely the slow, boring, hard part of building a car. A lot of sanding, a lot of dust, a lot of grit. Most of the time when you pull stuff apart, you find out there's more work to do than you expected. And it's not fun. This is just work. But we got to get through this to get to the fun stuff. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the fun stuff. It is coming, I promise. And subscribe, like, comment. Let me know what you think of this idea and kind of what we're doing with this car. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks.